Did you ever notice while playing a game, something just pops in or vanishes into thin air? To see something spawn in or disappear in front of your eyes takes away the immersion, the same immersion that every gamer craves for. But why does this happen? The game world is rendered in while there is a loading screen. Then why things like these happen while we are playing the game? The reason behind this is not just a glitch or bug in the game, it's much more weird. To understand why this happens, we need to first understand how game worlds are actually rendered into our field of view. With my noob level of editing skills, I present to you the game world as we think is rendered. My poor little PC can't handle anything more realistic than this, so please bear with me. This is our game world as seen from above. We have our skybox. There are some elements like rocks and trees that can be considered as the 3D models present in a game. And here we have our crooked little player model. His expressions tell us that he saw something he wasn't meant to see. I don't have a name for him yet. You can suggest some suitable names in the comments below. Now let's say our game is in first person mode. This is our FOV or field of view. We will see this much of the total map or our skybox in the first person mode. And to see what's behind us, we'll have to turn back. Now, here is what most of us get wrong. We think that the whole game world is present all of the time. Doesn't matter where we are looking. If I'm looking in this side, these two trees and these few rocks are in my field of view and I can see them. The other rocks and trees that are not in my field of view are still there in this game world. And guess what? All of this is false. It's incorrect and it's not how games work. The reality is a bit weird because this is how games actually work. Don't see any difference? Let's zoom out a bit. Notice something? Those trees and rocks that were behind us are gone. The player is looking forward and everything is present there, but the things that are not in the field of view are gone. Let me just make the player look behind. Turning around and now we are looking back. Wait, did you see that? Those trees and rocks that vanished a while ago came back. Now let's zoom out again. And now the rocks and trees that were present earlier are gone. And this is exactly how games work. Told you it's weird. So what happens in games is we have a field of view. And that field of view decides what is going to be rendered in the game. If we are looking in a certain direction, all the things that are meant to be there in front of us will be rendered. And when we start moving our view in different direction, or simply put, when we move our mouse, the things in our field of view are now rendered. And the things that are not in our field of view are gone. All of this happens so fast that most of the time we don't even notice it. And I said most of the times. Because sometimes due to slow disk drive speed, some models take a while to load and that's why we see them just popping into our FOV while we are looking in that direction. Alright, so games work in this weird manner. But why? Why don't just load up everything and let all that be there in the game? Why make it disappear when we are looking at it? It would be better this way, right? Well, no, it will be much worse because of one big limitation and that's compute power. To load a whole 3D world takes up lots of resources and time. To render an object into a game, it has to be loaded from the drive into the video memory of the graphics card, and then it's rendered by the graphics chip and sometimes the processor. This rendered object has a specific file size, like a video file can be 1 megabyte in size or even 100 gigabyte in size. The same is with these game models. Let's say this rock in a game occupies 1 megabyte on a disk. When it's loaded in the game, 1 megabyte of video memory is used. And now, if I have to load 1000 such rocks, it's going to occupy 1000 megabyte of our VRAM or video memory. And then load 1000 trees, which are more than 1 megabyte in size, and our video memory will be all used up in no time. And there's still a lot more to load in the game. Once the video memory is all used up, things are stored in RAM. As I mentioned earlier, these objects to be rendered vary in size from a few megabytes to multiple gigabytes. Due to this, RAM is also used up. This is the limitation. These huge game worlds are hard to load in at once. Even if a game world is somehow loaded up all at once, the game is going to run like shit. It will perform worse than any game released in 2023. That is why it's not ideal to load everything present in a game all at once. Everything is loaded when needed. It doesn't have to be the field of view only. If the game is easy to run, doesn't take up a lot of resources, then it's loaded in multiple chunks. Think of the skybox as one chunk. If it's easy to run, all of this will be loaded in. And then the other chunk will be loaded in once we move there. And similarly, games can be rendered in many other ways. The other trick that's used is called LODs or level of detail. In this, multiple models of the same 3D objects are created. More about these LODs in the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss that one. It's going to be interesting. Now to prove that this is how games are rendered, there is a little experiment that you can perform yourself. For that you'll need a performance monitor app like Fraps, MSI Afterburner, all the built-in monitor in your graphics driver. Then load up a game that's a bit hard to run on your PC. Once you are in the game, look at the sky and note the FPS. Usually, sky is easy to render. Now, quickly look down at the grass or something other than the sky. Try to look at some vegetation if possible, and you will see the FPS drops instantly. That's because vegetation is harder to render. And while we were looking at the sky, this vegetation wasn't being rendered in. And once we moved towards it, the vegetation popped in and was rendered in our field of view. Now you know how and why all this is done. And this technique of loading things partially is actually helpful in things other than games. For example, in the previous video I made this 3D scene. All these 3D cubes are pictures and videos. My initial plan was to fill this entire box with these 3D cubes. But once I started adding them, I realized my PC will eventually blow up if I did this. It's going to be extremely intensive. So I used this technique to render the cubes that are in the field of view of the camera. And if the camera moves, all I had to do was disable the cubes that were not in the field of view now. This helped a lot in making that video. You can watch it here and you will get the context of those cubes. They serve a purpose in understanding the truth behind the games we play, each one of them.